Some days I get a little discouraged, friends. I see all this stuff going on out there. I see where a lot of these people are when I hear interviews, when I see people talking in certain ways. It brings home how divided we are here in the United States, and not just the United States. Divided in the UK, divided in Brazil, divided. The forces of oppression around the world will not relent, and the unfairness of basically everything that's happening. This is what triggered me today. This came across my desk yesterday. 48% of New York City bus riders don't pay fares. 48%. Now that's not accidental. That's not like people just accidentally getting on the bus and they try to swipe, but it doesn't happen. We're not talking about a bunch of retirees being on there. Those count as paid people. The simple fact is that they have so many fare jumpers, they have so little enforcement. It's not being overlooked. It's being purposely done by the violators, and it's being purposely overlooked by the enforcers. If you're taking a bus in certain districts of the city, if you have a certain ethnicity about you, well, they're not going to enforce that. Why? Because so much of our system is about transferring wealth from the people that ought not have it to the people that deserve more. We're going to talk about that, friends. We're going to go through some of these things. We've got some interesting quotes out there of people predicting so much of this societal decay long before it got to these levels. And you're going to see that they are so very clear, so very on point. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Poplar Report. I'm Steve Poplar. I'm an accountant by trade, and so glad to have you join us here today. Before we dive in, I do want to thank our sponsor, Genesis Gold Group. They help people with retirement accounts get their fiscal house in order, right? If you have money that's not in a retirement account, then just go out and buy physical metals, physical food, physical energy sources, buy physical things. But if you have it locked up in a retirement account, you're a little more limited in what you can do with it. But precious metals are something you can purchase. If you want to find out more, Jonathan and his team would love to talk to you. There'll be a link at the end of the video. So we have this makers and takers conflict, right? In Canada, the amount of government employees, people on welfare, I think it was, I was reporting on it the other day, I think it's outnumbering now the number of people that have private sector jobs. So when there's an election, how do you think things are going to go? I mean, people who are receiving money from the government are going to vote to get more money from the government. And they can band together with all the other people that are getting money from the government to all vote themselves more money from the government. There's no one holding them accountable. They're just there at the bank, robbing the bank by democracy. There's a quote here from Archbishop Chaput. Evil preaches tolerance until it is dominant. Then it tries to silence good. Now, I know a lot of you guys have probably heard that quote before, but there's an absolute truth that evil preaches tolerance, 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 until suddenly it gets the upper hand. Then suddenly there is no tolerance whatsoever for anyone who disagrees with them. There's just tyranny. This is how Islam works, right? They want multiculturalism. Until they get control of an area, then Sharia law gets enforced under penalty of death. People who are not following along with the dictates get acid thrown on them, or stabbed, or chased, and women get hurt very badly. And you see this all across Europe, where they've just brought in so many people, and it's such a surprise that that these people who wanted multiculturalism don't want multiculturalism now that they're in charge of their little areas. C.S. Lewis said something else that was very, very hard-hitting. He said, of all tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims. Now, that's, of course, in the perspective of the tyrant. If the tyrant believes that what they're doing is for the good of the victims, it may be the most oppressive. It would be better to live under the robber barons than under omnipotent moral busybodies. Like the national level HOA, right? The HOA of government. The robber baron's cruelty may sometimes sleep because they're only taking when they want to, right? His cupidity may at some point be satiated, or his lust or desire or greed, right? But those who torment us for our own good will torment us without end, for they do so with the approval of their own conscience, because it's morally right. They may be more likely to go to heaven, yet at the same time likelier to make a hell of earth. This very kindness stings with intolerable insult. To be cured against one's will, re-educated, right? And cured of states which we may not regard as disease. Little boy wants to play with dolls. Well, we got to cure that, right? And the way to cure that is to let him be who he really wants to be, surgically. To be cured against one's will and cured of states which we may not regard as disease is to be put on a level of those who have not yet reached the age of reason, or those who will never will, to be classed with infants, imbeciles, and domestic animals. Now, this is still kind of the good spin on it, possibly, right? This idea that they believe that they know what's right for us, and so therefore we're too stupid to understand what we deserve, and so they're going to lie to our faces and know that what they're doing is really for our own good. And doesn't that describe so much of what's going on out there? When you look at the moral superiority in the eyes of leftists, they really believe that they're on a mission from God, except they don't believe in God. They believe that they're morally right, and so therefore everything that they do is morally justifiable. They can do anything that they want, anything that is expedient to them, and they believe that it's morally okay because they're doing what's good for mankind, or person kind, they kind. They will destroy a person for saying the wrong words, but then release someone who has assaulted, murdered, because the person that's murdering and assaulting and all that kind of stuff like that is not undermining the society, the greater political purposes that they have in order. This is why you go to places like Philadelphia, you go to Chicago, you go to these murder capitals of the world, and that's fine. But heaven forbid you post the wrong words on Facebook. You post the wrong words on Facebook and the UK police will show up at your door. If you go around stabbing people, the police won't show up at your door. You'll get released after just weeks in jail on technicalities. But heaven forbid you posted the wrong things on Facebook, you will go to jail for over a year, 2 years, or more, even if you're an 11-year-old child. Yeah, Google that one. Google that one. The UK arresting children for liking the wrong Facebook posts, for commenting supportive towards posts that should not have been posted. Can you believe that? If you're in the UK, I have videos on here that you should not comment on because you will probably go to prison. How about that? That's all okay. In order to stop hate speech, which they call violence, they commit actual violence with bitter hatred. They will do hate violence to stop your hate speech. And somehow, in the twisted logic of their twisted morality and twisted religion of leftism, that makes sense. In the same way that the Muslim ideology twists Hajis into suicide bombers, and they feel like they are doing this for God. So leftists believe that they're serving a moral higher good by attacking grandmothers, attacking small children with actual violence because they get angry over the words on their t-shirt. Heaven forbid you put a yard sign in your front yard. I've said this before. Consider putting a yard sign in your yard. But be aware that this may make you a target. You need to be aware every time you go out your front door, because there may be someone lying in wait to attack you because of your yard sign. Your words may justify in their minds violent action. This is the upside down world that we live in. And let me be as frank as I possibly can be on the place that we're meeting at. These ideologies that advocate violence as an answer to speech that they don't like will need to be defeated. They need to be defeated by better ideas, yes, to sway those who are not fully beholden by these insane ideologies. But then, those who refuse to listen to reason will need to be dealt with by legally administered isolation. We call that jail, right? People will need to be legally prosecuted who advocate that physical violence is the answer to speech that they don't like. There is no other way around this. And that means that we will need to move to prosecute speech. We will need to prosecute speech that advocates intolerance, true intolerance, not their fake intolerance, not speech that says that people shouldn't be allowed to say mean things about things. No. Inciting speech is when people are suggesting that violent actions be taken. Now, I'm not saying anything that's not already in the laws. I'm not saying anything that's not already been decided by judges. And some people may be like, Steve, you're sounding really extreme. I'm literally reading you what the law already says. You can't advocate violence against somebody. Free speech has not covered that and still doesn't cover that. But yet these people are doing it with impunity. We saw that when Donald Trump was elected, right? All these actors and actresses started doing the craziest, wackiest, insane things where they were actively advocating violence against their new president. What was it? Kathy Griffin had that horrific photo shoot where she got a prop, which was a reproduction of Donald Trump. And horrific. And that was okay. This advocating violence in their minds because they didn't like his mean tweets. They didn't like the fact that he wanted to take the United States back to a place where we cared for each other, where we thought all lives mattered. To this was like garlic and sunlight to these vampires. They joke about it now. But you can see that they're not joking. They truly want to end us. They'll say it in these kind of jokes and stuff like that. When they talk about civil war, they're not talking about defending their rights. They're not talking about protecting themselves. They're talking about eradicating half the country. The flyover country that they look down on so much that they've tried with all of their might to control us and to force us to go along with all their woke ideologies. And when we've resisted, they've resented us to the point where they see us as the enemy, and they will do anything they can to end us. Listen to them. That's what they're saying. You have whole chunks of the population that think that you and I ought to pay for all of their expenses because my skin looks like this. Somehow, I and other people that look sort of like me have an obligation to pay all the bills of people who have a different complexion. They would make us slaves, which is truly ironic, isn't it? They wouldn't say it like that, but yet that's exactly what it is. What do you call somebody who has to work for you under compulsion, force, threat of prosecution, or threat of violence from the police state? That if I don't pay all of my taxes for these people's bills and everything like that, the police will come, seize my house, take my things, throw me in jail under the use of force. Call that something other than slavery. I dare you. We do not have the rights to ourselves anymore and the fruits of our labor. We have been given the permission by our government through its benevolence. We don't have the right to work and the right to earn our own livings. We have been now given permission and the privilege, which can be revoked at any given time. You can't run your farm the way you want to run your farm. You can't run your factory the way you want to run your factory. You can't hire the people you want to hire. You have to do all of these things the way they want you to do them. And more people are realizing that there's a word for that. And it starts with an S. We have become not just serfs in our own country, but lower than that, we have been forced into servitude. And these people who are forcing us there do not like the fact when we push back. And anything that they want to do to us, in their minds, they justify it. And we need to understand that this great conflict of our nation, surely we want to be on the side of the conflict that has the federal government. We want them to rise up against the government. That will make things a whole lot easier than if we are forced to rise up. Because, quite frankly, the government has a lot of resources on its side. It has a lot of aircraft carriers, fighter jets, all of those things. And right now we are in this posturing political battle to decide who will be sitting at the control panel in Washington, D.C. when we finally come to a conflict. And that will make this a very different story between a conflict that lasts for a very bloody, long period of time, or could make this a very short, relatively straightforward conflict. And all these people saying that they're going to fly to Canada if a certain person gets elected, thank goodness. If they could just leave us alone, go live in their utopia up in Canada, that would be perfect. Even let them take California. Let them take New England. Just have them leave us alone. That's what we ask for. And yet they cannot do that. They cannot. It is inherently in them to refuse to leave us alone. They are on a mission from whatever deity they believe in to oppress and to conform, to proselytize in the most violent way those who disagree with them. I don't see how this ends in any way other than one form of conflict or another. I hope we win the election. I hope that this will be a relatively straightforward process, maybe even a geographical parting of ways, a peaceful parting of ways of different states. That would be the best case scenario. And I hope that that's how it goes. All right, friends. Thanks for listening to just some of my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments down below. Appreciate you and all of you who stopped in to watch along for today. If you want to check out another video from this channel, there's one right up on the screen. And if you want to check out what you can find out from Genesis Gold about what you can do with your retirement account, that's right there on the screen too. Just tap that and fill out your information, and they will get in contact with you. Thanks so much for watching. Steve Poplar of the Poplar Report.